the voice of the NCF&B podcast finally gets out of the box for a weekend. I'm down in Fuquay Arena for the Freedom Balloon Fest, but I know that you're doing today's podcast about some great veteran-owned breweries in Fayetteville, and it's All-American Week in Fayetteville, and it's a great time to tie that into the Freedom Balloon Fest here. And we couldn't be more excited about this week's podcast, as a matter of fact, because we're tying in some things here in what we're calling the landing zone. And I got to give a shout out to not only Fainting Goat, which is a veteran-owned brewery here in Fuquay Arena, but a big tip of the hat to Michelle Minuti and the women-owned brewery in Holly Springs. Bombshell is bringing it with the Uplift Ale. They've got a special brew just for the festival in honor of this year's Freedom Balloon Fest. So we hope everybody will come out. We actually have a lot of food here, and one that was mentioned by NCF&B podcast. Our caterer is going to be Blake Gottliff from Under the Oak Farm, is going to be handling all of our VIP catering. So we really appreciate you guys making that happen. But finally, the box voice, is out of the box for this week's podcast anyways, and then next time I'll be back inside the box. So thanks for making a shout out, guys. I appreciate it. And remember what Memorial Day weekend is really all about: to remember, honor, and to celebrate the lives of so many of those military families who've given so much to our country. We appreciate it. Thanks, guys, and enjoy this week's podcast over a cold, frothy one from right here in North Carolina, especially those that are brewed by our veteran-owned breweries in Fayetteville. Hoorah!
You're listening to the NCF&B podcast, part of the OG Podcast Network. The NCF&B podcast takes you behind the scenes of North Carolina's food and beverage industry. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram at NCFBpod. This episode sponsored in part by Food Scene. That's foodseen.com. Providing professional photography, social media management, video production, and website design. And now, enjoy the show.
Hello, and thank you for listening to the NCF&B podcast. I am your co-host, Max Trujillo.
And I am your co-host, Matthew Weiss, and we are on location in Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, and we have a very special day of visiting some of the best breweries here in Fayetteville. So right now, we are at Bright Light Brewing Company with the likes of owners and proprietors of Bright Light, Mike Ray and Eddie Ketchum. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks. Thank you.
The catch. Yeah. And also, I would be remiss if I didn't announce a voice you might be hearing today. The lovely Miss Melinda, have to say sorry, Miss Jackson.
Hello.
She is our...
I am for real.
Yes, she is our Fayetteville affiliate, and she is the PR and social director for the Republic based in Raleigh, but a local and native to Fayetteville.
Yeah. So we're in Fayetteville, and Matt and I, just as background, we're not from North Carolina. You can probably tell that real fast. But we both live here now, and we love this state, and we love exploring all different aspects of the state within the food and beverage industry, and that's hence why we're at about 100 episodes at this point. And so we've traveled all around the state and talked to people about food and beverage, and this is the first time we've been in Fayetteville, and it's important to us to understand all the pockets of what makes the state so beautiful. And I would say the first thing you think of, correct me if I'm wrong, about Fayetteville is military, right?
Correct.
And so Melinda and I were having a conversation, and she said, there's a bunch of breweries that are popping up in Fayetteville. I'm like, really? She goes, yeah, and a lot of them are military owned or at least employed, a lot of military veterans. And so we started getting to talking and said, well, let's do an episode and let's feature the amazing brewers that are coming out of there. Let's hear their stories, and let's release it on Memorial Day weekend, which makes a lot of sense to to honor those that fight for our country and defend our freedom. And so I think this is a great way, and thank you for starting off here. So with that said, we're at Bright Lights Brewing Company, but when I see the acronym, I just think Bright Lights Big City. Was that any happenstance mistake?
No. It was actually when I was a home brewer. I had a dingy little corner of the garage that we converted into a overdone homebrewer space, really. Got a little overzealous with it, and put in some new lights. And when I turned them on, my wife said a few curse words and said, "That is a bright light." And I said, "Okay." And she said, "So that's Bright Light Brewing right here." So that's basically how that came about.
I love when names come organically like that. That's perfect.
It's funny. I wonder if fellow North Carolina Brewing Company Gizmo could ever work something out with you guys and do it together. Call it the Gremlin Ale. Bright light, bright light. Don't you remember?
We talked to Gizmo too, so that's pretty cool. Yeah.
All right. Well, I already trademarked that.
I'm going to mention that.
Okay, but trademark. That's a Trujillo beer, North Carolina F&B.
So before we get into your story, Eddie, as a homage to the show, you were in the military. You came back to Fayetteville to live here and lay roots down. Would you mind sharing us what your highest rank was as a officer?
Well, got out as a staff sergeant, and then just decided to stay in Fayetteville. I was more or less put out on a medical,
Okay.
to a degree, and when I started working for the city, because that was the first job that I got, and well, here it is 19 years later.
Yeah.
So how many years did you serve?
14 total.
14 years. Wow. Yeah. For those that can't see, Eddie's 74 years old.
I had some overlapping service and stuff because I was on active duty. Then 9/11 happened. I was supposed to get out, stop loss. All those 2001 babies from the Army understand stop loss means. It means that you were about to get out, but Uncle Sam chose a different path for you.
Oh, wow.
So I had to stay in a couple extra years under the stop loss. But when I did get out, I started working for the city. And about 2 years after I got out, I was considered a critical MOS. The Army offered me a lot of money to go back in.
I'm so sorry. I know nothing.
Yeah,
your
we're
MOS
civilians.
is your job. What your job was in the Army. It's your military occupational specialty.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's
So you were
what your specialty.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So basically, they felt like they couldn't do this without you, and they needed you.
Yeah, well, I mean, so many times.
Yes,
I
just
guess.
say
I'm
yes.
Special.
Yeah. You were critical to the
Special
project.
library.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so they offered
You were
me
critical to the freedom of our country.
They offered me a lot of money. Don't get it twisted. I did it for money.
Which is why you became a brewer.
Actually, you know what though? Kidding aside, that's actually kind of cool. That
Well, they, that's just it. Is I did my enlistment in the Army. A couple of those years were not voluntary. Because of the stop loss. I got out, started my civilian career, and when they called me back and said, "Hey, we're short on these MOSs. Would you come back? X, Y, Z." And I did some soul searching on it. Yeah, of course I will.
I gotta ask, just because I'm fascinated as someone that has never been involved in the military. I gotta know what was your recruiting story like? Like, how did you decide to get in?
To make that very short, I grew up in a place called Avery County, North Carolina.
Okay,
That's where I'm from. A lot of people look at you strange and will say, "Where's that?" But you tell them, "Hey, it's near Linville Falls or Grandfather Mountain."
Yeah.
So
So you're over there, like that's like
Boone.
the mountain. Bill,
Yep,
yeah,
Boone,
Boone.
yeah.
Get some snow out.
Yeah, I lived about an hour south of Boone and an hour north of Asheville. So
Okay.
it's
a cool spot.
for all the brewery people. They know exactly where I'm at now.
Yeah.
But just getting out of there, it was just an option to get out, and see the world, I guess.
Yeah.
So I joined the Army when I was 17. That's the end of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Went to airborne school and went, "Hey, welcome to Fort Bragg.
So
You're never gonna leave."
I assume after 9/11 you were sent to the Middle East.
Yeah.
Where, Afghanistan? Where'd
Yeah, I did. All the tours that I did was in Afghanistan.
Okay. There's not a lot of beer being produced in Afghanistan, I imagine.
But shitty beer.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. Are there people actually brewing beer in
Yeah,
Afghanistan?
beer actually originates from out that way.
That's
so
exactly right. Yeah,
So,
from the Middle East,
yeah.
meet the Egyptians.
That's
beer.
right.
Beer actually originated in various different forms from out there. So they've been brewing beer for a few thousand years, but we've perfected it. So.
Right. Right.
It took him a few thousand years to still make lousy beer. In just a couple weekends, you guys figured it out.
Right.
So you get out, you finish your second run in the military when you came back, and then how does the idea for starting a brewery come about?
It's all about a guy I served with, Chris, who's not here with us. He's off doing his contracting thing. So we all come together, and the good idea fairy started flying around, and then we just started throwing money at it. I mean, that's pretty much what happened.
Right.
Thanks for that re-enlistment bonus.
And then, so Mike over here knew a thing or two about brewing beer, and you had the home brewing, which your wife was such a fan of.
Yeah, I started home brewing. It seemed to do really well. I started brewing with any commercial brewery that would let me sit in on a brew, free labor, and a lot of breweries on the bigger scales will take free labor all day long. So I brewed with everybody locally, a few up near Hickory and Granite Falls Brewing and all that. And then just got the idea one day that we were going to try and do it ourselves. And we started the corporate paperwork and everything, and then a year and a half or so later, I met Eddie and Chris. I met them through working for Dirtbag. I was Tito's brew hand for right under 2 years. With the anticipation, they understood that that's what I wanted to do. So once again, free labor and some help.
And Tito also started home brewing as well,
he did,
which we'll
right.
talk about later.
Yep. So we all come from kind of the same background. So I think that works out well with all of us because it doesn't create any animosity between us. No competition, so to speak. So, we all come from the same cloth and we all wanted to do the same thing. So they took it and I gave it, and then 2 years later we ended up here. And what I did was took homebrews that I had done that were very popular as a home brewer and moved them over into the commercial side.
Gotcha.
And so now, obviously, we have a few beers that are fixing to come on to the table that are a little bit of a twist on the normal stuff. And, but in general, we just try to make a nice, clean finishing beer.
So perfect segue. You guys were kind enough to pour us, both Max and I, a flight of 5 different beers that you guys make. So what do we got in front of us?
Basically, you have your 60 watt, which is our IPA.
Okay.
It's not a hophead IPA. It's more of a middle of the road. Something that people that say they don't like IPAs, they could drink it.
Yeah.
You call it a 60 watt because it's not like in your face crazy.
Right. It's
60
not.
watts of
It's
chill light bulb. It's
right.
not
Such a bright light. It's a medium.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it keeps it pretty level.
What's the ABV on that?
It's about 6.4.
Okay. Middle of the road.
Middle of the road.
Yeah.
Yep. You can have a few without worrying about being plastered. And,
Yeah.
And
by the way, we didn't mention that Melinda, with all of her many talents, is also our driver today. So
Yeah, that's why we're able to have a flight of 5 in the morning. So what's next? This one's certainly darker.
yeah, that is our amber ale.
Okay.
Pretty straightforward. Maybe just a slightly bit hoppier than a normal amber that you would buy, say, commercially.
what's the wattage on this one?
I want to say it is 5.8, I believe. So it's a little lower, a little more sessionable, so to speak.
Oh yeah, that's delicious.
And then the name comes from my daughter, and I said if I ever brewed commercially, I would name a beer after her, and that's actually the first beer we ever brewed.
What's the name?
As a company, Amber's Amber Ale.
Oh, okay. You said it's Amber.
Yeah.
I didn't get that.
My daughter's name is Amber.
Got it.
So
Amber's Amber Ale.
Yeah.
Were you already a fan of Amber Ale in naming your daughter Amber?
No. Actually, I didn't start drinking beer until I was probably late 30s.
You're this like the second or third person I've heard that like you don't catch the beer bug till late, but then when you catch it, man, boy, you make up for some lost time.
I really did not like. Well, I mean, the domestic side of the house, even though we are what I consider to be true domestic beer, but as far as your stamp standards that have been around for years and years, I just couldn't drink them.
Yeah,
and
that was
I just
Grady.
didn't like them.
Grady from Pine Top didn't really drink it all, and then he just decided to be a distiller.
Yeah.
And make
Well,
booze.
with Baker too from Bond Brothers, I don't think he started drinking beer until much later in life either.
Yeah.
I really didn't. I just couldn't. I didn't have a flavor. I didn't have a palate for it, and but then I tried.
Drinking, though, because you had to be drinking something.
Mixed drinks and hard spirits.
Don't let Mike fool you. This
Yeah.
guy will suck down a bottle of margarita.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you're fancy, is what he said.
I do
You're
enjoy
fancy.
the
me go way back.
I do enjoy the margaritas. So, and
You go down to Mi Casita and just get fancy
the
and wild.
less mix is in the margarita, usually the better. Right? You know.
I'll have a margarita. Hold the mix.
Don't. You know,
Mike's
basically.
got to
give me a-
get very angry. Is that when you look around, you know, we built everything in here. We all came in, the wives, everybody came in, and we painted the wall. This was a warehouse when we moved in.
Yeah.
Didn't have the bathrooms weren't existing, the coolers, the air conditioning. So we had to do it all. And this ties into the margarita story because when Mike would show up, he'd bring a 2-liter stainless steel container. And Mike, what the hell is that? He's like, it's my goat juice.
Oh.
It's my workday fluid. You know?
It's your pre-mixed margarita.
Some people drink water. I drink margaritas. You know?
Something to keep you interested while you're doing all this manual labor, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
If anybody wants to try to carry your beer, say like in Raleigh or in the Triangle, we have a lot of listeners that are out there in Durham and such, and they meet your qualifications, meaning they're cool enough. How would they reach you?
Basically, right now you can get on Facebook or Instagram.
Yeah.
And message us. You can look us up, obviously, on the phone book if that still exists. And,
Wow. Old school.
Look us up on the internet. We have a presence there, and the phone numbers are all there.
Yeah.
And,
Meaning that you would consider distributing or sending a keg up.
Oh, absolutely.
Sending a keg
Yeah.
out.
We do it. We do it as much as we possibly can because once again, it just spreads the name.
Because I want to segue to this next beer. I went ahead before everyone else did, and I feel like this next beer needs to be in the Triangle
Yes.
in a serious way.
Maybe a keg at the NCF&B studio.
What are we drinking?
The hazelnut toffee porter.
Hazelnut toffee porter. Matt, this is delicious, right?
And on top of what you said, being you said it was delicious, this is one of the first beers that I brewed and took out to weddings, parties, stuff like that.
Yeah.
And it was extremely popular then, and we've been really lucky that we were able to translate it over. And it's outside of the IPA, it is our number 2 seller.
I will say this.
So-
When you put your nose into a bag of coffee beans that are like a hazelnut toffee coffee,
Yeah.
you want that coffee to drink the way it smells, but it never does. It's always like, it's kind of there, it's kind of got it.
It's almost
this
like bitter
beer
coffee. Yeah,
tastes
totally.
like what you want your coffee that's hazelnut toffee to taste like.
That's a great compliment. Thank you very much.
It's delicious.
What
man.
what does create the flavor of the hazelnut toffee in this?
Basically, we buy a English toffee concentrate,
Yeah.
basically, and the hazelnut as well. So we take a basic, our basic porter recipe is called Black Light Porter. And all that is without the toffee and the hazelnut. Because of our system, we can't really overload it with flavors or like solid, like we can't pile in a bunch of nuts and stuff like that. And then toffee obviously is always an extract, you know.
Yeah.
So we just kind of put that in there until we felt like the taste was balanced.
Yeah.
You know?
So I'm sorry. At what point in the fermentation or the process are you putting this? Are you putting flavor?
It would basically be considered a secondary fermentation. So we go through the regular fermentation, and once fermentation is slowed down to almost nil, and we're getting to the point where we're going to carbonate it, we put it in at that point.
Cool.
So and then we carbonate with that, and that mixes it real well and gives it an even balance across the board.
Is that what traditionally flavored porters are done? Because, like Max said, this seems to have staying power with the flavors. It almost seems like it's as if it was roasted in there. So, is that traditionally how?
Now the coffee notes and the chocolate notes you're picking up, that's in the grain bill.
Okay.
So just a little bit of the hazelnut flavor and the toffee flavor are what we introduce secondary.
That's what comes out because of it being a stout. Like,
Right.
That's just a natural
Right.
inherent flavor.
And so the grain bill would be what in this?
We have pretty much some black patent malt, chocolate malt, 2-row for our base sugars, and a little bit of flaked oats for a little hint of creaminess.
Okay.
And then the hops are pretty mild. We usually use around a 5% alpha Cascade hop, which is used widely across, right? And we just kept it real simple. We didn't want to over hop it or put a hop flavor in there that created something that conflicted. So we let the hazelnut and the toffee and the coffee and chocolate notes come through. This is the Brown Irishman. It's actually an accident beer. It is not what it was supposed to be. It's really close to what it was supposed to be, but that's what happens when you misread the scale on certain ingredients. It was actually an Irish red, literally a straightforward Irish red, that we put a little too much roasted malt in. And when you add roasted malt, carries a lot of color, a lot more color than it carries in flavor, I personally think. But so when we put a little too much in, my fault, it turned it brown. And so being it was an Irish red that was just brown, I called it, the Brown Irishman.
Brown Irishman.
And we thought it would be okay. We really didn't think it would be much, but that is probably in the 3rd or 4th on the seller list. I mean, people it's smooth, it's almost lagerish.
If it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and when we put it out, we said we'll see how it goes, and if we don't sell it, we'll never make it again, and we'll put it on sale and blah blah blah. But it had rave reviews from day one, and when we run out of it, people ask for it.
That's a sessionable beer right there.
Yes, that beer comes in right around 5.2.
Okay.
So it's very light or lighter on the alcohol level, so you can enjoy more than 2, 3 of them, and it's got a good smooth flavor. It's not a traditional brown, so to speak. You don't get the real nuttiness and everything of it, but the brown came in just basically because of the color.
Yeah. But this is, all right, for the novice, this is technically an ale, then the Brown Irishman. Is that right?
It is. All our beers are ales.
All your beers are ales?
All our beers are ales now.
But so what makes this a porter and this not a porter?
Basically the ingredients. The brown versus the porter. The porter has the black patent, the chocolate malts and stuff like that. Those aren't present in the Irish.
So you don't have the chocolate malts and what else?
The black patent. Basically, black patent gives you a dark color. It makes it black.
Okay. But this has some other roasted malts in
it. Does have roasted.
It gives it some similarities.
It has roasted barley in it. So that gives you... It gives you that hint of roastiness.
So again, it's back to the grain bill that gives that similarity.
Right. The malting of each grain is really what determines your color and how much malt forwardness you get. I mean, obviously, if you add any flavors, stuff like that, or fruits, or anything like that, you're going to tone back the maltiness. But with beers like that, Irish reds and stuff, they're very malt forward. So you don't want to put anything too crazy into them. You want to... Traditionally, we would have wanted a nice tinted red beer, but with roasted barley, you get it carries a lot of color.
Yeah.
So if you're a pound or two over, it's going to start shading the beer.
Darker,
So
with your lineup, that mistake can be rectified pretty soon because you're probably going to go through this beer pretty fast, right?
We do go through it. We go through it so fast that we just don't even bother to change it back. We just leave it.
What was a happy accident?
It was.
You want to keep it?
It was definitely a Ross happy accident. We painted a pretty tree and it stayed. So it was good.
Bob Ross. Got it.
Bob
Ross happy accident. So just a great observation, just going back to the original idea of being in the military, being in Fayetteville. Matt, I don't know if you could have told because you had your back to him, but so far since we've been in here, 2 different gentlemen in fatigues have come in to hang out and have drinks, and I love and appreciate the fact that this community is so open and like the community is made up of the military and men and women that are serving for the nation. So it's pretty cool that they get to take a little time off, have a couple of brews, a couple of ales, and go about their day. But it truly paints the picture of where we are at all times, which is kind of fun.
Yeah,
that's correct.
Well, and speaking of painting the picture, so it should be mentioned that Melinda has put together us with our Cumberland County's Hometown Hops Passport, which we're going to try to get stamped today. So I think there's 5 breweries in here that if you get stamped, you get some swag.
Prizes.
Yeah, so we're stamping.
$100
We need
bill, y'all.
we need our stamps for our Bright Light Brewing Company.
Sarah will give you multiple stamps.
All right, Sarah,
You'll
we need
get all
some
the
stamps.
and they can probably even give you guys stickers because I know you guys have stickers too.
Yeah, I want stickers.
I
We'll
have
walk you out with some swag.
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you guys. So I'm obviously
Fun
from the
fact
area
alert.
originally. What? Hush. I'm taking over. This is now my podcast. Welcome. No, but I have a question. I'm from the area, and I just want to know what made you guys actually want to do this in Fayetteville.
We all have roots here. So, Eddie was military and works for law enforcement for, however, 12 years, 15 years. So, and I was a tattoo artist here for the last 23 years. So, we've all got our roots here. We've got
you are
homes
nicely
and-
sleeved, I
Yeah.
will say.
Thank you.
He has
That's the
0
running
tats
joke
right
in the
now.
bar around here, so a cop and a tattoo artist
Yeah.
open a bar.
Well, honestly, that's
What's the punchline? That's what I want to know.
well, like Fayetteville we have the All American Tattoo Convention here, and we're always like, hey, military and tattoos have a huge tie, but I also feel like beer and military have a big tie because that's
No,
what
mostly I've heard that military do not drink.
ever.
Well,
For
margaritas.
wine spritzers.
Yeah, margaritas. and
Margaritas,
wine
sorry,
spritzers.
excuse me. Sorry.
Very safer.
This segment brought to you by Ramona Wine Coolers.
So yeah, we were all just we're here. We've all been here for 20 plus years, and so we did it in our backyard, so to speak. Versus trying to go into another town or city.
You're
and try to
growing
do
the
something
community
different.
here.
Right.
I love that. And
Right.
one thing that I love, because I have been here before, and one thing I love when I come in, there's always a million dogs, which I love. And you drink a couple beers and you just want to hug all the dogs, and that's my favorite. And there's families. One day I was here, there were like 3 strollers, and people just had their whole family, and they're sitting there, not in a bad way, I promise, but they're sitting there on the couches, and you guys have games that they can just pull from at the front, and they're playing board games with their kids, and their kids are running around hugging the puppies, and it was just such a good feeling. I can tell that you guys have a great family atmospure.
Yeah, we wanted to keep it that way.
That's how we camouflage our hellions.
Oh yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
You let the stroller sit at the front, so everybody,
Yeah.
We all have kids.
It's all distraction.
Mike's got his son that's just now coming up to 8. I've got a 5-year-old daughter and a 10-year-old son. My oldest boy, he's 17. He's off to the Army in the next couple of months. But we all have kids too, so all young kids, and it's just better. We don't want to carry the stigma of being a bar.
Exactly.
And too many places turn into that. And one thing to keep the rowdiness down and the young guys that want to come in and party too much is put a bunch of toddlers in the room.
Right.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
don't wanna be
instant
here.
birth control right there.
Yeah, and it was breweries that we went to too. Other breweries do the same
Yeah.
kind of
And I feel like
platform.
that's a common thread in the Cumberland County breweries. Everybody wants to be family friendly.
Right.
Everybody wants it to be a safe space you can come and just enjoy beer. It's not a party spot.
Right.
You just want to hang out, enjoy beer. be with
We
your
all
kids
know
and
if you've been in Fayetteville more than 5 minutes, there are plenty of party spots.
Exactly.
So we wanted something a little different, something a little more family oriented.
Well, I appreciate the time that you guys have given us. We are
Thank you.
This is the first quarter of our 4-quarter day. So thank you for your time. Matt, what else you got?
I appreciate the time and the beer you've given us.
Yeah.
So when you're in Fayetteville, hit up Bright Light Brewing Company. You will drink very merrily.
When it comes to vodka, it starts at the farm. Social House Vodka sources corn locally from a farmer who plants non-GMO corn. And because it's made from corn, it's also gluten-free. Social House Vodka comes from Kinston, North Carolina, and sources water from the ancient Black Creek Aquifer. Social House Vodka. Live socially, enjoy responsibly. This segment is brought to you by the Triangle Wine Company. Visit Triangle Wine Company stores in Morrisville, Cary, and Southern Pines, North Carolina. Or order your wine and beer online at trianglewineco.com. And be sure to use our promo code NCFB to receive 10% off your purchases. Triangle Wine Company.
This is part 2 of our Fayetteville beer extravaganza, and we are here at Dirtbag Ale. Dirtbag Ales, yeah. And we are with the owner and head brewer, Tito Simmons Valenzuela, not related to Fernando, for those who are asking, sadly, but probably a fan. And the assistant brewer, Ms. Hope Demetris.
Hello, hello.
Welcome. Thank you for having us here. We
thank you guys for coming out.
Yeah, we have 15 beers in front of us, which we will be finishing in 15 minutes, and then we'll start over the conversation.
Power hour.
Yeah. So, yeah, well, Tito, you've already been referenced a bunch on the podcast, and we talked about you a bunch with Melinda, our Fayetteville affiliate over here. So you're somewhat of you've spawned a lot of action and ideas and other brewers in this town.
Yeah, I guess that's what they're saying.
The guys at Bright Light were saying that they had trained with you beforehand.
Yeah. Mike worked alongside with me for about 18 months before they were getting started.
So inspire us. Tell us why you're awesome.
I mean, I get up and I work, man.
Yeah.
That's really it. I work and.
Well, so you do have a pretty awesome background. You were a medic in where were you exactly, or what was your highest rank, and where were you stationed?
So I made it to E5, so I was a sergeant in the Army, and I did 8 years as a medic. Two years of that 8 years was spent outside of Fayetteville. So I've been here since 2006.
Okay.
I left and went to Baghdad for 15 months, came back. And then I went down to Savannah for a year, and then actually re-enlisted to come back here again because I met my now wife, and she was going to school at Methodist, so re-enlisted to come back here, and now it's home.
Yeah. So, a couple things drawing you back here: your wife, and then just the area in general. I assume is pretty cool.
Yeah. Like when I first got here back in '06, like I wanted to see. You know, I was always gone. I'd go to Chapel Hill or I'd go down to Jacksonville. And then when it came time for me to get out of the military, like, it was, my wife had a job and the price of living here is great. Yeah. And I figured I only had one opportunity to actually do something like this, and this was a place that really needed it. So we stayed here and went to town.
Yeah.
It hasn't been easy, but...
Random fact, I think I read according to the Bloomberg Business Weekly, it's the number 5 top housing market or new housing market in the country, something like that.
Yeah. Fayetteville, like even during the recession, like there was never really any loss here. Just because it's the military town, everybody had solid steady paychecks and all that stuff.
Economically, the military is bulletproof.
I mean, government can just make more money, right?
They can just print more money.
Yeah. You got the key to Fort Knox? We need a couple more billions.
Yeah. No, but Fort Bragg is stationed here, and while we're doing fun facts, apparently also Fort Bragg is the largest. How did I write
military installation in the world.
As far as personnel.
Yeah, and it houses about 50,000.
Yeah, and you've also got like 4 or 5 major headquarters here, between the Special Warfare Center, the School for Special Warfare, the Force Comm Commander, 18th Airborne Corps, 82nd Corps, and the Reserve Commander. So
this is a pretty legit military town. That's what we're saying.
Yeah, no, they did a whole like realignment thing, and basically it's the center of the military universe.
Yeah. So what's cool about that, and I didn't realize, and I don't think a lot of civilians think about, but when I first came out here, I was working for Heaven Hill Distilleries, peddling their booze and wares, and I'm also a wine guy. And I remember actually the person who first enlightened us on Fayetteville was Ryan Hinson of Tin Roof Teas, because what he said was, and actually he does well with his exotic teas in Fayetteville, and the reason is he does well here is because a lot of the veterans had traveled all over the world, and thus acquired a eclectic taste, and then will seek out these exotic teas and stuff. And so I imagine that really helps with tastes for craft beers.
Yeah, you have, like in my last unit, there was, I don't know, probably a handful of them that were from California. So they're used to going to new breweries and drinking new things all the time.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get here and they're like, oh, there's not really much to do. And I'm like, well, there is things going on in Fayetteville. You just got to get out there and find it. And I was like, and the only way it's going to get better is if you are out there supporting those people who are already doing those things. Because that was my big thing Monday morning. Like, what'd you do this weekend? Standing out in front of formation. They're like, oh, well, I played video games and got drunk in my barracks room. It's like, well, you can't really complain about
Not being
doing
in a
anything.
good
So
place.
get out and actually try. Yeah.
So, being a medic in the military, what is that? How does that compare, I guess, to going to medical school? And what are you prepared to do?
It's funny you should mention that. Because in being a medic in the military, while you are trained to do a lot of life-saving interventions, and as long as a doctor signs off when you're doing it, you're allowed to do those things. Civilian side, we're only authorized to basically drive ambulances.
Be like an EMC.
It's an EMT.
yeah.
Wow.
Did you do that for a while when you got out? No.
No, I went straight into this.
Oh.
Yeah. Yeah. So basically, I signed out on terminal leave in August of 2013. The beginning of that month, we contract brewed our first batch of Blood Orange Kolsch. I went and kegged it out, got my DD-214 and all my paperwork, basically clearing me from the military, and then that following Monday had tastings lined up. So
Wow. You don't let the grass grow, man.
yeah.
Well, you have a really cool story that I want to touch on, and I know a little bit of background. So I know you were a home brewer first, and the brewery you started with guys you were deployed with. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we all knew each other from the military, and like Eric would come over and brew with me in the morning. We'd work 12 hours a night.
Who's Eric? That's your partner?
Eric's one of my partners.
Okay.
Yes. So as far as partners go, it's me, Eric, and Jerry Hall. Papa Jerry is what we call him.
Not the famous ex-supermodel, Jerry Hall. Married to the big giant.
No.
Okay, just look-alike though?
No, Fayetteville Jerry Hall.
We call him Sexual Chocolate.
Okay.
Oh, I met him. I think I met him.
So Eric and I were working in the emergency room, and we'd work all night, and then we'd have 2 days on, 3 days off, 3 days on, 2 days off. So it was always this like weird schedule. So I just started home brewing, and I was like we'd have parties basically every quarter, and it grew from me making 5 gallons on the kitchen stove to making 8 gallons outside on the little bayou burner, to building an all-grain system, to eventually we had a kegel system we were doing between like 15 and 20 gallons every month of just new stuff.
Yeah.
And we had a yearly Oktoberfest. It was kind of like a block party, 2 ales, 2 lagers, and I had my kegerator out, and people would just come over. We'd do brats, pretzel buns.
You'd stuff your own sausages.
Yeah. Make my own sausages.
But so your story is you were a home brewer to a now commercial brewer. Was there ever a stint where you were working with like another brewery, local brewery, or anywhere else where you were gaining some knowledge?
So when we were contract brewing, all of the brewing was done out at Rail House Brewery in Aberdeen, and I basically like that.
You mean you were contract brewing for the beers
we were brewing our beer at their facility.
Right. Okay.
But for like the last year that I was in the military, we had decided like we were gonna do the brewery, and started asking about pricing and getting quotes, and it's like, okay, we're not that rich, so like nobody's got that much money. It's kind of like laying around. So the idea was to find a brewery that would just let us come in and use their equipment. I mean, do everything. We had our wholesaler's permit. Like we set up our entity in the state of North Carolina.
Yeah.
Everything was legit, and basically all they would have to do is pay the taxes on it, and technically
a lot of wineries work at crush facilities, things like that, where they make their wine in a bigger, larger facility, but it's still theirs.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
So we did the exact same thing. I mean, so that was like a year, but we were really just going for like proof of concept, because like there's plenty of businesses that have come and gone, especially in this area, and we didn't want to just jump into it head first and then end up bankrupting our family. So
yeah.
Yeah, that seems to be a common theme so far, is to set your business up right so that you're not owing any money or debt when you're a couple months in.
I mean, it's just 2 of 2, but is this a lot of military training in that? Like, I have to imagine the discipline, obviously, which is what most are known for. I mean, like, where the military is known for being disciplined. Mm-hmm. So is there a business discipline that maybe comes from there too? Like, let's just not be a bunch of wild assholes and come in here and start doing the business.
I would say hustle, like the amount of hustle that you have, but not necessarily the structure of the military it's not even the same pace in this sort of setting that it would be, because it's really based on what's happening, not what someone else is telling you.
Sure. It's I mean the mindset of adapt and overcome that you get from the military, like that's something, just having that fluidity, like day in and day out. But also knowing you have all these irons in the fire all the time. Like, this weekend we've got like five birthday parties, 2 events, and everybody's everywhere, and like all the time you just got to be like, okay, prioritize this, and this. And you just keep moving forward, and it works the same thing or the same way when it comes down to finances. Yes, you want to spend money on this or that, but realistically right now, what should we be focusing on? What should we be paying down? And then just that juggling, I think, it's more of a, like I said, just adapting. And
I wonder,
situational awareness.
Like, as a business owner, and hope yourself, I didn't ask, but are you affiliated with the military?
My dad was in the military. I grew up here mostly.
Okay.
I moved around, but mostly here. I graduated high school about a mile up the road. Right
Oh,
here.
wow. Okay.
And then left, came back. So my husband now is military as well.
Okay, so
my whole life
deep in the family.
Yeah.
I wonder though, like, how the hiring process and the people that you surround yourself with here in Fayetteville, the military has to like play into that, in the fact that like there's got to be this camaraderie kind of language. There's like we kid around, like if you're a line cook in the kitchen, you have your own kitchen speak. It's like this is how we talk to each other. Heard chef, behind pot coming through, all that stuff. But there's got to be that familiarity, just knowing that you all have kind of worked in the same industry, alternate industry, but same industry nonetheless. So is there that familiarity that kind of comes through when you're working together in the brewery?
Yeah, there is. I think it's just everybody kind of knows where the next person's coming from, and like the same, they have that shared interest or that shared experience, basically. Because for her, like, she gets it from the aspect that like her husband has to go to JRTC or get deployed because he's on a GRF mission, like, and then on the other side, there's the folks that are actually living through it and have been there and been the ones that are like, in the middle of the night, I gotta go. Sorry. Pack my bag.
Yeah. There's a commonality in lingo philosophy. All right, let's switch gears here and talk about Dirtbag Owls.
Okay.
First of all, where does the name come from?
So when I was working in the emergency room, I had a coworker who was also a home brewer. He'd been brewing for much longer than I had, and he was telling me about a 30-pound ale, and basically like the amount of malt that you put into a batch of beer directly affects the alcohol content of your beer. And he's talking about putting 30 pounds in basically a seven-gallon batch, I think. So it was like some ungodly amount of alcohol, and I was like, 30 pounds of malt. And somebody said, one of the nurses overheard us saying 30-pound ale, and she was like, what's a Dirtbag Ale? I was like, that's a great name for a company.
it's my new brewery name. That's what it is.
And I just kind of went with it, and I made a little logo and just started putting it on my bottles, and
nice.
And
there's a charm to it. I mean, you just as soon as you hear Dirtbag Ale, you're like, I gotta know what the hell's going on over there.
That's gotta be a cool place.
Most folks assume that we're just like making like some ode to being like crappy military personnel, like, because a lot of guys in the military, like, if you're, for lack of a better term, a piece of shit, you're a dirtbag. Like, like, oh, that guy's a dirtbag, like, don't trust him.
I think that's resident even outside
Right.
of the military.
But then,
what is this dirtbag word you were speaking of?
But then the ironic thing is, of course, you have females very integrated in your business as a brewer, and
brewers,
and Shannon, who's running all the business or front of the house operations and everything basically.
Yeah, she's basically like my right hand.
So would they be called Dirtbagettes?
Isn't it like the French bread, like baguette?
Yeah.
I would just rather be a dirtbag. I think it's unisex.
Yeah.
Well, because we always said, what do you call
non-gender
a female
specific.
douchebag? A female douchebag is a douchebagette.
You just think French bread. You're hungry.
She's on a low carb diet. It's fine.
Dirtbag.
All right, let's talk beer now.
Yeah.
So you mentioned the Blood Orange Kolsch was one of the first beer. Was that one of the first beers?
Yes.
And is that kind of your calling card? Like that's what you're known for? I mean, in the passport here, I see.
So we
try the Blood Orange Kolsch.
We have it on tap and it's always available. And it honestly, it sells usually twice as much at least out of our tap room than any of the other beers. So. It was the second batch of beer that I made. My mother-in-law brought me up some blood oranges and kind of just combined the two together and didn't stop brewing it.
Remind me and speak to the beer novice. What makes a Kolsch a Kolsch?
So traditionally, ours is a Kolsch style ale, and that's actually
If you ask someone from Germany, they will say we do not have a Kolsch.
Yes.
In a very shitty accent.
So the Kolsch is indicative of the Cologne region of Germany. It's very specific mountain water, typically Pilsner malt, a little bit of wheat malt, or Munich malt to add some body to it, but noble hops and then German ale yeast. And you do sometimes lager it for a little while. You can do 2-week lagering. And that's what's special about the Kolsch yeast because it allows itself to both ferment at top ale temperatures, and you can take it down to basically the top end of lagering temperatures.
Okay.
So it'll still be
It's
active.
almost a hybrid between the two.
Exactly.
Lager
It
and
is
ale?
technically a hybrid ale. Like it's Kolsch style / hybrid.
Okay.
So what's going into your Kolsch?
So we put Pilsner, a little bit of Munich, and then where we kind of go astray is the fact that we add 54 liters of blood orange juice, and then another, in the boil, and then another 3 pounds of Cascade hops at the end for more citrus aroma.
Okay. Cool.
And then we just use our regular water as well. Like we don't have a fancy reverse osmosis water purification system where we had to resalt to get specific water from that region. But
The sandy soil here helps with that as well. Just the filtering of it with just the sand.
Gotcha.
Helps.
Like a natural filtration.
Nice. What's the ABV about on the
5.8.
5.8? Okay.
That's a pretty meaty Kolsch, right? I mean, Kolsch, in my opinion, I always feel like Kolsch are kind of the light summer drinking beer that are pretty easy and low alcohol, I would assume. So this is a little out of
usually
character.
between 4.5 to 5.3%.
5.8 to me, I'm like, that's a low medium.
That's the session.
But your gauge is a little skewed.
So technical question here. In the wine world, we say, sugar converts to alcohol. You're saying in the beer world, malt essentially converts to your higher ABV potential.
Yeah, so the malt itself, inside the malt is trapped, like the proteins, the starches, and all that stuff. And then the mashing and boiling break those down into smaller chains, and then the yeast can consume it and create ethanol, as well as the flavor profiles that you get from the beers.
Okay.
So it's still that. It's still sugar.
It's still sugars.
Just a different sugar.
So my question was, so when you add a blood orange juice that has a lot of natural sugars, is that pumping up the ABV?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, it does. It does slightly
Bring
bring it up just a little bit.
that sugar
Right.
as well.
Right.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
That sugar
Cool.
content.
Yeah. And so, just getting started with and understanding your profile, I guess, were there styles you were like kind of hoping to be like or emulate? Was there like a brewery or a style or a region where you're like, man, this is the kind of stuff I'm really into, what I want to do?
When I first started brewing, like the breweries that I followed very closely to see like what they were doing was Bell's and Dogfish Head. I felt like those were
Excellent breweries, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought they were both very, very good. And then like Dogfish, just the creativity behind his beers and that imagination like always intrigued me, and that's kind of, I mean, that's what motivates me. It's like, because ultimately you can kind of do whatever you want with it as long as you go through the right steps. And and the only thing holding you back is your own imagination.
Yeah, they always blow me away. They were a featured beer at the James Beard Awards when we were there in Chicago earlier this week, and they were throwing down crazy beers. I mean,
You're a James Beard Award, so exactly.
Says something.
They put their best foot forward when they're out there, but but they to say they were keeping up with everyone is kind of a lowbrow way of saying it. They were like pushing it for everyone with the type of stuff.
I mean, the guy started out pushing me on board. He had to go back and change antiquated laws and get a lawyer. And the whole nano system is piloted off of what he did, essentially, like coming up.
You're technically a nano brewery as well, is that right?
No, I guess a micro.
You're a micro.
Yeah, we got a.
And then when you move into the new space, I'm sure you'll
still be micro.
Yeah. Okay.
Micro is a good term.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. You don't want to be Bud Light.
You can be massive and be a micro.
Yeah.
Well, Yingling is still considered a microbrewery.
Oh wow!
Because it's barrelage, like yearly barrelage output.
So what is your yearly barrelage output at this facility?
At this facility, I think last year we were right at around 1,800 barrels.
1,800 barrels. Okay.
Pretty good amount.
And then what do you expect at the new facility?
The new facility, hopefully by this time next year, will be nearing 4,000.
And do you want to talk a little bit about the new facility? Because I know it's bare bones right now, but it's super cool. So anything you want to share about that?
So going forward, we've learned quite a bit here. We moved into this space back in February 2014. We took it over, started brewing here September 2014. Didn't get a tap room until November of 15, just because the whole permitting process for us here was a nightmare. But as we move forward, we purchased 6 acres, basically right off of 95, a little bit further out. It's about 3 miles from here. But the point of it is to both make it easier for distribution and get the amenities that we don't have here. Multiple bathrooms, floor drains.
Not just inside though.
So talk a little bit about like literally what the outside is like, because I've only been to the outside and you've got a lot going on.
Yeah, so the grounds themselves are going to be kind of like an adult funland. We've got a beer garden that we're putting in. It's going to be nice manicured, outdoor covered pavilion. There's a dog park, kids park, and then we're going to have I believe 2 regulation size fields for soccer, lacrosse, kickball.
Wow, that sounds like where I want to hang out.
And your farmer's market.
Yes, so we do a farmer's market on Sundays. Currently, we just basically reach out to local vendors and get them to come out. So produce has not been producing very much just because of the weather and all that. But we did a strawberry festival, and hopefully throughout the growing season we'll just get a lot more products in. And lastly, we're going to have a service window kitchen. For larger events, we're still going to bring in food trucks, which will have plugs so there won't be any noisy generators.
Paved parking lot.
Yep.
Exactly.
Y'all grown up.
Yeah.
Can you just speak to a little bit about, like, you guys are all about community?
Yeah, so we do a ton with both local nonprofits and local organizations. We do work with the USO, the Visitors Bureau.
You have weekly yoga, you have run club.
Oh, yeah. Local businesses. So the run club is kind of up to the folks to come out and do it on Thursdays. And then the yoga, we teamed up with Hayat Yoga Shala, and she comes in.
Who's also a veteran. Mm-hmm. She's like a total badass lady veteran, and she is like goals forever.
Yes. Well, thanks so much, Tito. This has been great. Good luck in the new facility. I can't wait to go out and play some games of soccer and kickball while having a couple of beers. So for all of you out there, when you're come to Fayetteville, go to Dirtbag Ales and give it a
Guests of the NCF&B podcast receive a swag bag, including gifts from these exceptional North Carolina producers: Social House Vodka, Hungry Harvest, Alley 26 Tonic Syrup, Michael's English Muffins, Larry's Beans and 42 in Lawrence, Ramona Wine Coolers, and Happy Hour Vitamins. Thanks for listening to the NCF&B podcast. I am the voice, Brian Hoyle. And if you've stuck with us this long, review us on iTunes, and remember, 5 stars are encouraged.